fast streaming. I'm gonna be like 10 seconds behind.
Hello, chat room. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Alright, let me just turn that right now. Cool, 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 cool. There we go. Alright, let me get some stuff up. Let me turn that down first. There we go, that's better. Alright, so, chat room. Chat room, we're doing something, okay, you know what, maybe the Dawn of War soundtrack's not, like, the right soundtrack for this, because it's, like, objectively evil sounding. I say that. No, it kind of is. I don't... What are we going to put on in the background? What do we want for background music? What do we want for background music that isn't just going to get, like, annihilated by copyright strikes, right? That's the real question. So it can't be anything Disney, it can't really be anything Nintendo. Both those guys love to just strike things from orbit. It's really gonna be MechWarrior. I mean, come on. Oh, no, I know what we'll do. I know what we'll do. There we go. Okay, there's a playlist for this, I swear to God. There we go, playlist. That's good. Alright, so, let me get back. Howdy. Howdy, welcome to my OBS setup. Let me get this out of the way. Welcome to my desktop. Let me get this out of the way. So, what we are doing today, chat, is... It's mostly going to be yapping stream. But we're doing something very... I want to say something very special. It's not all that special, but I think it is kind of interesting from a very niche angle. It is mostly going to be me yapping. But, you know. If you weren't ready for that, chat room, then I don't know what to tell you. I don't know how you can turn up to a Kallen stream and not expect Kallen yapping. We're going to be making a game. We're going to be making a tabletop game. Now, let me do some pre-making preliminary stuff. Because I think there's some level of qualification that we should go over. Or to put it another way, why you should be watching and paying attention to me doing this as opposed to, I'll be blunt, most of the other people in a similar position to me. Which is to say, without any actual, like, professional credentials to their name in terms of making games. And, before we do that, though, I do want to do some, a little bit of housekeeping, just a little announcement thing, which is, so I made some shorts from the last stream, the MechWarrior stream, and put them up on YouTube. And, you know, I threw them up there. I was like, oh, you know, maybe they'll get a handful of eyes on them, you know. If we're lucky, one of them might even get, you know, like 50 or so views. That'd be pretty cool. You know, let me go check the numbers. We can do that real easy. Do that real easy. Where is he? It's me. channel. Oh yeah, let me put this where you guys can see it. So, yeah, here's the channel. Here's the channel. Here's like, you know, some of my videos. Well, one sat on 91 views and 606. I don't really know how that happened. It's... I don't know dude. I don't know, dude. I will say that was all in like one day. It was like I posted it up on like... It was the day after stream, so it would have been the... Fuck, when do I stream? It was like the Thursday evening it went up. And then I checked back on like Friday. No, it wasn't the day. It was the Friday evening it went up. It went up on the Friday evening. And I checked it the next day and it was on like 600 views. Which, yeah, that is like nothing in terms of viewership. But considering I streamed to exactly 2 people, you know, that's big. That's big numbers. For me. You know, I thought that was pretty neato. I was happy with that, and I wanted to share that with you all. Not that that's done anything for viewership for the rest of the channel. You know, like 2 views on the newest stream, 1 view on the last one before that. Crab Quest, yeah, I mean... But to be fair, I've never posted the VODs with any intention of them, like, actually getting views. So, you know. This is a slightly different story. These are here for advertising, but... You know. I thought that was a cool thing to show you guys. And, you know, that wouldn't be possible without your support, so, you know, well, thanks. Thanks, y'all. But... yeah, so let's get on to the meat and potatoes. So, why do we listen to Kallen? You know, in a more professional setting, I would have actually had like a PowerPoint for this, but... So, why do we listen to Kallen? Well, number one, this is not my first radio. Let's just start off with, like, history. Clearly, top of my class in fucking typing school. There we go, that's readable. Alright, so, history. I've been playing, tabletop role-playing games for... Oh, fuck me, it's been... God, how long has it been? Probably about 12 years? No, it's longer than that. Yeah, it's close to like 14 years. So I started in high school. I don't want to give out like an exact age to not like dox myself, but suffice to say I've been playing a pretty long time. That is a large percentage of my life. So I've been playing a while. God, that was back when I think like 3.0 was this, like 3.5 wasn't even a thing yet, I think. There's a big question mark on that because I'm not certain. That's D&D 3.0 and 3.5, by the way. So, I've been playing tabletop RPGs for a long time. I have qualifications in writing. While that's more story stuff, it does also mean I do have technical training, and I've got training and education in forms of technical writing as well. And how to make those work in fiction and with fiction. I mean, there's a lot of examples of this. One that I own and was gifted to me by a friend in particular was oh fuck, what's it called? It was a fucking Black Horse print. It's called like the Kill Book Memories of a Bounty Hunter or something like that. But it's laid out as a it is of course entirely fictional, right? It's like it's the personal diary of a fictional super soldier that has all these different profiles of like his hunts and potential allies and stuff in. It's pretty neato. But it's laid out as a non-fiction thing, right? Like, you're meant to read it, and the way that it's written is that it's meant to be informative rather than just entertaining. So yeah, there's stuff like that. There's stuff like technical manuals for fictional cars and so on, and yada yada yada. And of course, any given RPG or the setting that gets wide enough recognition does end up with what are effectively non-fiction style guides to their these fictional settings. And that's something that is important for tabletop role-playing games, and that is something that I have also studied, so not to pull too much of an appeal to authority, although I guess this would be more an appeal to education, but whatever. I have been taught how to do this stuff and how to do it well. To the point where I have a master's in it, so this is very much me leveraging my education into something that I actually enjoy doing. For what it's worth, I have tried sitting down and doing the whole write a novel thing. Didn't... It's hard. It's real fucking hard. Like, I've heard people be like, oh, everyone has a book in them. And I think everyone has a story in them. I think that much is true. I don't think just anybody has the capacity to sit down and write a whole ass fucking novel and to do it well, or even necessarily do it at all, because it's a lot. It's a big investment in time, it's a big investment in effort, and it's a big investment in like passion, for want of a better word. Like, it's hard to keep doing something when the passion for it has gone. So, and I don't think just anybody can keep those fires stoked for as long as it takes to finish up a novel. That's before you even start talking about, like, getting it published. I don't think I do. I don't think I have the stuff to keep that going for as long as it takes. I have ideas, I have stories in me, but sitting down and putting it into chapter is difficult. It is probably a bit beyond me, so I'll happily admit that. This is much more where my talents lie, is in making these kinds of games. Speaking of these kinds of games, I have made, over the course of playing role-playing games... Oh, let's just get this one out of the way. I've played and GM'd, which... Alright, we'll just explain this for the D&D heads out there, and I will need to have a rant about D&D, but we'll get to that in time. Don't worry, it's coming. The big D&D rant is coming. GM is just the non-copyrightable version of Dungeon Master. We use GM because I don't want Wizards of the Coast to send a fucking Pinkertons to my house to break my kneecaps. I don't need that in my life. And Wizards, if you are watching, please don't send the Pinkertons to break my kneecaps. I have nothing against your studio or your games. In fact, I do enjoy playing Dungeons and Dragons trademark. And also Magic. And you guys were cool when you were still printing the Pokemon TCG, but... Anyway. I just really don't want them showing up on my doorstep, dude. Alright, that's a clip right there, baby. Kallen appeals to wizards to not break his kneecaps. We'll work on it. We'll get it in post. Okay, so I have played and GM'd so many goddamn systems. Some you have probably heard of, many that you haven't. And this is key. So many goddamn systems. If I had to put a number on it, it's easily in the double digits. Probably close to... In terms of games that I've played, it is a lot more than I've GM'd, I will say that. In terms of... That count is probably close to... Okay, hold on. I'm gonna do some maths here. We're gonna do some thinking, so... And I will count different editions of some games, because a game can really change over different editions. I am not going to include tabletop war games or skirmish games, because that's a different kettle of fish. It's important, but just in terms of role-playing games, I started with 3. I've also played 3.5, I've also played Pathfinder. I did Deathwatch after... Well, I did Dark Heresy after that. Then we did BTM, we did Mythic Iceland, we did Horizon, we did Boot Hill, M&M. We did Fusqua, we did... We did Fate. We did... Did I count Boot Hill? Oh, it's that weird World War I game. There was Tactical Waifu, there was Savage Worlds. God, I know there were more than that. Oh, there's fucking D&D 5th edition. That's kind of important. There was a lot of Deathwatch and Only War, but they're so similar to Dark Heresy that I'm not going to count them as different. Some people would make that argument about Pathfinder as well, but no, I think that is different enough from 3.5. Just... Oh god, those Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition, how could I forget that? Then there was the Homebrew 1, there was Cascade. We never actually played Frontier Blast, there was a Raycore. There was... God, what came after a Raycore? Then we went back to Cascade. Right, and then there was Anthurium and Chrysanthemum. And I am almost certainly forgetting a bunch of one-shots. So if I had to estimate it, in terms of number of games that I have played, probably 25. I think 25 is a fair estimate. Some of these as one-shots, some of these as real long fucking campaigns. Some of them a lot more successful than others. And you may have noticed a few of those are in fact homebrew. I was fortunate enough in uni to be playing with a lot of old heads, a lot of people who've played a lot of Oh god, yeah, I've played like AD&D 2nd edition, which I've simultaneously been told is very much a thing and definitely isn't a thing. And I've never bothered to check that information, and I'm not going to start now. If it's real, great. If it isn't, I don't know what I was playing. I was playing something that had tobacco. Yeah. Yeah. So. Chat room. I've played a lot of systems, and I've probably GM'd about half of those. That is counting active play. I've also gone out of my way to research a bunch of other games in the past, which leads into the next point. I've made several systems. I've probably made... It's less than 10, but I have put significant effort into making several systems in the past. None of them have been perfect. None of them have been fantastic. And, well, we'll get into it. Which mostly work. I will say that the systems I've made previously, with maybe one exception, have not been fantastic. They've been fine, they've been playable, they've been good enough. But I wouldn't say any... I think all of them have been learning experiences more than anything. They've been good learning curves. But... yeah, let's just get that out of the way. Cool. But none of them, I would say, are really, like, final products. So, here's the deal. Oh, and the reason why I bring this up... I have been preparing for this for a long-ass time. But I'm going to put, specifically, D&D purists on blast here. Because D&D, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, or really Dungeons & Dragons any edition, you need to understand, I work, so, the Kallen IRL job, I work in a game store, and when we started advertising for role-playing games, do you want to know what we put on the signs? We didn't put we play RPGs here. We put we play D&D here. Because everybody knows what D&D is. Oh yeah, it's the Stranger Things game. Oh, yeah, D&D. I have that one cousin that plays it. I've always been kind of interested in it. D&D has set itself up as the role-playing game, right? It's kind of like the nerdy chic thing to do, almost. It's like a gateway into it. And don't get me wrong, I do very much like that there is an RPG that is out there to cater to like new fans and new people and get new people into the hobby. That's great. Any hobby needs new lifeblood coming in to keep it alive, to keep it going. Like, a hobby that doesn't have new people coming in, or really any activity that doesn't have new people coming in, is going to die to... Let's try that one again. Any hobby that doesn't have new people coming in is going to die to stagnation. That's just the way it's just the way it goes. So I am glad that there is an RPG out there that caters to new people. Except Dungeons & Dragons should not be that game. Because Dungeons and Dragons does not meet any of the requirements that a game for new players, for people new to role-playing games, should be hitting. And the end result of this is that people play Dungeons and Dragons and have the wrong idea of role-playing as a hobby, as like a general activity. Because they only have the Dungeons and Dragons experience, which is like the. So what does a? We'll just make this a point. What does a newbie-friendly RPG need? Ideally, it should be simple. Simple to understand and seamless in execution. And what that basically means is you read the rulebook and you go, okay, I get how that works. And then when you sit down to play, it just plays nicely straight out of the book. You don't have to do like these big. You don't have to spend a whole load of time referencing things in the book. You don't have to spend a whole lot of time sat there doing maths and looking up obscure rulings. You can just sit down and play. And it is nice and easy, nice and straightforward. It takes very little greasing the wheels to get them playing, you know? So it should be simple. It should be versatile. There's more than one setting that you can play a role-playing game in. Dungeons and Dragons is very good at doing what's colloquially been coined as Western medieval fantasy, which isn't a real genre, but you all know what I mean when I say it, so I guess it is. But this is your typical elves and dwarves and orcs in fantasy with magic and stone castles, and there's probably a king and all that good stuff. Swords and crossbows and sorcery and yada yada yada. Dungeons and Dragons does that very well. Occasionally, people will get a clever little idea where they're like, oh, we should do D&D but modern. And what they'll do is they'll change the set dressing, right? They'll go, oh, well, instead of hosting it in a town, now it'll be done in a school. It'll be done in like a high school, and oh, the orc's wearing a varsity jacket, and isn't it funny? Hee hee. And if that's your jam, absolutely, go for it. But understand that you will still have the same races in that game. They will still be swinging the same swords, firing the same bows, casting the same spells. Except the backdrop looks different. And you could turn around and go like, yeah, but Kallen, that's true of any given game, right? When it comes down to it, all you're doing is rolling dice. Well, yes, but the problem with D&D precisely is that these things are all baked into the core game. If you want to play a wizard, no matter what, you will always be picking spells from the wizard spell list, regardless of setting, regardless of how much or little sense it makes to have a wizard in the game. If you're playing at a particularly argumentative table, and you decide that your setting does not have gnomes, for instance, well, if one player turns around and goes, oh, no, actually, I don't know if gnomes are even in the core book, elves. If you decide that your setting does not have elves, and one of your players goes, oh, no, I'm playing an elf, and you go, you can't, and they go, it's in the core rules, and they kind of have a point. The point that I'm getting to is that D&D runs exactly one setting really well. This is fine, but for a newbie-friendly game, not so much. Because new players should really be introduced as early as possible to the idea that actually a role-playing game can take place in a whole load of settings. Vampire the Masquerade, for example, is in urban fantasy. It is a modern day urban city based game, but with vampires and werewolves and shit like that. And if that sounds like your jam, go check it out, because it's not a bad game. Combat could be simplified very fucking easily by just not doing it the way that they do it. It's been a hot minute since I've played VTM. I think they've probably had a new edition since I last played, so I don't really know how it works anymore. There's a nice big asterisk on the whole. It's a good game. It's a cool concept. The one complaint I have heard about it is there are too many capital letter pronouns going on. Not capital letter pronouns, capital letter nouns. Yeah, there's like a million special things in VTM that all have like these proper names. But if you can get past that, not a bad game. Not a bad game. Not a good game to onboard new players with, though, I will say that as well. It has the same problem that D&D does in that it's slightly too complicated. It's too narrow in its approach. But whatever, I've probably tangented like 3 times here. The point is, the bottom line, is that a newbie-friendly RPG should be versatile in both build potential and in setting. Certainly in setting. And I said build potential, that's not really what I mean, because build potential means, oh, well, someone should be able to min-max it really easily, or whatever, and that's, no. It needs to be simple in setting, not simple, fuck. It needs to be versatile, there we go. It needs to be versatile in both its setting and basically how you can approach playing it. So, it should be something that is simple to pick up and understand, but it shouldn't be boring, right? And this is where point 3 comes in. It should be suitably complex. So, one of the settings that one of the games that I forgot to mention, which is why we counted up to 25 and not, the 21 that I could actually remember. There are 2 games that I've played that are I enjoy this song. Give me a second, chat room. I gotta drink some water real quick. God, I didn't even ask how you're doing, chat room. I hope you're all good. Hope you're all having fun just listening to me yap. Alright, so 2 games that I've played previously. Okay, they're kind of hard to pin down. One's called Rhesus, and the other one was a Left 4 Dead. I'll call it a quote role-playing system, because it wasn't really a role-playing system. I think we played it with like 15 people and everyone died. It was rough. Anyway, the point about both of these is that these are more or less, and actually there's a third game that I've played called Tactical Waifu. We did some weird stuff in uni. It's not that weird. It's very much one of these shitpost games. I'm trying to... Oh yeah, here we go. Oh, don't put it on. It's on fucking script. I just want the character sheet, dude. Well, it's not really a character sheet. Whatever. It's based off of another game, which is basically a... Oh, some people are calling it a war game. I can see it. I can understand it. I can't find the thing I'm looking for. That's annoying. It's based off another game which is meant to be totally not Star Trek. But the point about all these games is that they are, by design, very, very simple. Both Tactical Waifu and the Left 4 Dead game use exactly 1d6, I believe. I think the Left 4 Dead one might have used a d10 instead. But basically they did, let me get paint up. Paint, where are you? Yeah, so basically they did a scrolling scale thing, right? But so you could have stat 1 was up here and stat 2 is down here, right? And you have your scale of 10 to 1 or 6 or whatever's up here. And basically, if you're rolling stat 1, rolling high was good. And if you're rolling stat 2, rolling low was good, right? But, if you're rolling stat 1 and you rolled low, then obviously that was bad. I say obviously because maybe it's not obvious. Anyway, these would be opposing stats. So for Tactical Waifu, like, one of these was Tactics and the other one was Waifu for, you know, trying to be a cute anime girl. It really annoys me that, like, Tactical Waifu is the game that's just sticking my mind to explain this with. But okay. But, see, here's the problem. These don't make a good onboarding for new players, right? I mean, let's just design our own real quick. Right, and we'll make it strength up here and intelligence down here. There we go. So already we're running into problems, and I'd love to see in chat if anybody can, like, kind of preempt what any of these problems are. That'd be cool. But the problem with this is, well, okay, let's go back. Let's look at our, what does a new friendly RPG need? It needs to be simple. Well, yeah, this is pretty fucking simple. If you're doing something that requires strength, you're gonna roll and try and get high. And if you're doing something that requires intelligence, you're gonna roll and try and hit low. The point is, you would have to put yourself somewhere on this chart, right? So let's say I want to be like more smart than I do than I want to be strong. Okay, well, I'm going to put myself. We're going to put ourselves here on the chart. Alright, so that means if I want to do something with yeah, if I want to do something with intelligence, I need to roll below the line. Okay, well, if this line is sat on a 7, okay, well, anything that's 7 or lower, cool. I do that, great. I succeed. But if I want to do something with strength, well, now I have to roll 8 or higher. Ah. That's not good. That's like a 30%? 8, 9, 10? Yeah. Oh, except 0 isn't a number, so that is actually a... No, that is a 30% chance. Yeah, what's 3 over 10, dude? basic maths, and I'm the one you should be listening to about making games. I can do simple statistics like 3/10. Truly, I am the smartest among us. But yeah, okay, so we have an easy enough to understand simple system. It's simple in design, simple in execution, simple to understand. Great. Excellent. You don't have to be referencing rules or rulebooks. You don't have to be looking up obscure rules interactions or anything like that. It's all just there. It's versatile. You can use this for any setting, and you can make pretty much any character with it. If you want to make someone that's like super high charisma, you just have to roleplay the charisma. You don't have to worry about having a high charisma stat. If your setting has like wizards or whatever, well, they probably have a high intelligence, but beyond that, you know, you probably just have to roll intelligence to cast your spells. Or maybe you can talk to your DM and be like, hey, I want to play a muscle wizard. In which case you're gonna invert this and you're gonna go like, gonna go like down here for your stats, and then be like, okay, well, I don't cast with intelligence, I cast with strength. So I want to be rolling high for my spell. Like, you get it. You understand. The problem is, this is a terrible system for new players. This right here is absolute dog water for new players. Because it misses point 3 entirely. And that is that it's not suitably complex. What do I mean by that? I mean that if you're introducing someone that is new to role-playing games to role-playing games, your system should ideally reflect with a fair degree of accuracy what other systems are like. Or, more fittingly, it needs to place itself along the skill growth curve. So, they're going to be starting off. They're going to be starting off like down here, right? And let's say, for the sake of argument, that Dungeons and Dragons is like up here. Well, they need to go from down here This is terrible, hold on. They need to go from down here up to here. Which means to some extent they need to understand the rules. At least the general rules and their character, which means class. Oh, hello. Class. Why can't I write? John Windows, why have you taken my keyboard controls away? I do not understand why I can't type. No? Okay then. I guess not. I guess we're just gonna carry on. That was fucking bizarre. Alright. Cool. Yeah, so that means class, race, features, so on. That's on top of understanding, like, the new dynamic of what a role-playing group is, and yada 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 yada. So, you've got to learn all that stuff. Ideally, and like games like D&D are... this is the end goal, right? This is where you want them to be once they've played your game. So ideally, you want your game to be like somewhere along here or like here in terms of like complexity. it can't be all the way like down here. Right. It can't be less complicated than Monopoly, which I'd put like there. Because that's in the same way that D&D doesn't set up a good example of what's to come. Neither does a game like Tactical Waifu. I feel a bit bad mentioning Rhesus earlier on, because Rhesus doesn't quite do this, and it has very good reasons for not doing, or for almost doing it, but not quite. It was a game that was made in like 24 hours, I can't be too hard on it. But the bottom line is that you have to strike a balance between having your system be simple and effectively brain dead. I mean, I say that, I don't think that's even particularly fair. I don't think it's brain dead, but I do think it's... It is too simple. So the problem with D&D is that it doesn't hit any of these marks. Is it simple? No. It takes veteran players an hour and a half to make a character. I mean, sure, some people can just like turn up and go, oh, okay, well, I'm going to take this, 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 and this, and I already know all the stats for it, and blah, blah, blah. And that's one thing. But in the character creation process, if you don't already know exactly what you're taking, when that can take upwards of an hour for one person, yeah, no, that is probably too complex. And that's just character creation. Forget about how little D&D actually gives you towards actually making a character with like a capital C, right? You know, someone who is alive, in a sense of the word. D&D, it takes an hour and a half to make a stat block. Most of the time, when I have played D&D with new, either entirely new or relatively new people, they've not even bothered making a character. When you ask them who they are, they will tell you their race and class. I've even had one new player go on at length about their stats, as if their character in the game would know that they have an AC of 21 and a +3 to strength. It is bizarre. But that's just the kind of game that D&D is. It doesn't incentivize you to making an actual character, it incentivizes you to making a stat block to throw at things. That's not to say you can't roleplay in D&D and have fun with it. Indeed, a lot of people do, and a lot of more successful creators than I have made entire channels out of it, and much more besides. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that D&D is the reason that they have done well. In fact, I would even argue that D&D has been holding them back this entire time. It's unfortunate that Dungeons & Dragons has positioned itself as the game that people new to role-playing games should play, because it doesn't do any of what it needs to do. And off the top of my head, I can already think of much better examples. For instance, Fate, role-playing game, has its own little niche. It has its own little problem with aspects. But once you understand what aspects are and how they work, and we're not going to go into that here because that's not within the scope of what we're doing, it's actually a very simple, fairly compact, and tactically nuanced game. It lets you make choices, for good or for worse, for you and your character. And ultimately it's rewarding to play. One of my previous homebrew games was actually based largely off of Fate Accelerated, which is a variant of Fate. And yeah, no, it worked well. Fate is a much better onboarding tool for role-playing games than Dungeons and Dragons. The only downsides really are, well, aspects are weird to understand at first. Once they click, they make a lot of sense and they're fine. But I've played Fate a couple of times with new people and aspects always catch them out. There's always this weird half an hour gap where they're just sat staring at their paper like, I do not understand what these... aspects? Hello? You do need someone there that's played before that understands what aspects are and how they work to explain. Even if it goes into, okay, look, you don't need to understand what aspects are exactly, but like, just take this, you'll understand. Just play a few games, you'll get it. And it really is one of those weird things that, like, you just have to work with it until you intuitively understand it. And from that point on, it is, like, very simple, and you're fine with it, but your first couple of aspects are always difficult. But other than that, it's a fantastic tool for onboarding new role players. Savage Worlds is another game, which it drops the simple point. Savage Worlds is not particularly simple to understand. The way that its stats and skills work aren't necessarily intuitive off the bat, given that one is essentially a limiter for the other. However, it's really good at being versatile, and it's really good at setting expectations for other games that you will play in the future. It also has the advantage of introducing you to basically every die type under the sun. Yeah, no, Savage Worlds is good. The only problem is that it is not simple. It suffers from one of the same problems that D&D has, which is there's like 10 million options just in the core book, and then 50,000 splats that you can add on as well. I guess they don't call them splat books anymore, do they? What, expansions? What are they called, chat room? Do you know? I think they are just called expansions. But no, Savage Worlds is a much better game for onboarding people. And then I think Rhesus, actually, or Rhesus, I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it, but let me find Rhesus. Rhesus, the Anything RPG. Yeah, let me just pop this on screen. Let me just make sure I'm not gonna get, like, splatted into... I'm not gonna show you guys the whole thing on stream. Obviously. But Rhesus is not half bad in terms of, just being a simple game. Yeah. So all Rhesus really does is... And bear with me, I've not played Rhesus. This is one of those I've read it but not played it systems. I have played Tack Wife and Left 4 Dead though, just to clear up any confusion on that one. Ugh. Yeah, there we go. Cool. So, basically, Arisa's character is made up of what they call cliches. Like, these are just roles, right? These are just things that your character could be described as being. So, you know, this one appears like Viking, Womanizer, Gambler, Poet. And like, you have a number of ranks in that, and that determines how many dice you roll when you're doing that thing. I do enjoy that they, like... they put William Shatner as an example of a thing that you could be. I think my next character... or if I make a character in Resus, they might have to have a point in William Shatner. Also, if this somehow ends up coming across Mr. Shatner's feed, hi, loved you in Tech War. And now that I am banned from William Shatner's Twitter, let's continue. Yeah, no, this isn't a bad little system. It is very straightforward. It's very easy to get into. And just the entire tone of it makes it so that it's so much less intimidating. It really is just like a low stakes. It is based on like universal comedy systems, which, if you don't know, these are basically very simple systems that are made pretty much exactly just to have a good time with. And I really vibe with that. I think that's really cool. I also think it's a really good thing to give people to get them into role-playing, because, yes, it doesn't quite hit suitably complex. It's not great at setting up. Jumping from Risus into, for example, Deathwatch, yeah, no, that's not going to be a great time. Unless you really like to challenge yourself in that manner. I don't think that's like a, oh, I want to get good at Dark Souls kind of challenging yourself. I think that's a, I read books on calculus for fun kind of challenging yourself. I think that's the kind of, you're a little bit insane kind of challenging yourself. I don't recommend it. It does miss the suitably complex mark, but it does everything else really well. Well enough that I think that Risus really should be the go-to game for, hey, you've never played a role-playing game before? Cool, pick this up. This is what you want. So, with all of that said, and I will say, because I know maybe some of the people I know in real life will come around here, let me just say this. I don't actually think that 5th edition is a bad game. D&D 5e, and really D&D in general, has never been bad, but it's never been good for what it is commonly pitched for, and that is as a new player-friendly game. And the only people I've ever seen who are like, oh no, it's fine, usually have at least one of these two things that are true. Number one, they will apply caveats to it. Oh, D&D 5e isn't bad as long as you prevent new players from playing spellcasters. Oh, it's not bad if you make these tweaks to the core rules. Oh, it's fine if you don't let them do this. If you have to make such sweeping statements as, oh, they can't play any caster, if you have to make endless caveats to small points of the rules to make the, or even large points of the rules, to make the game even work slightly, for these like new players, that's not a good system for new players. A game where you have to functionally ignore half the rules is not a good game for new players. especially not players who are new to a hobby that that game is a part of. Oh, it's fine for new players as long as they don't have to make their own character, you just give them a pre-made. But, like, 90% of the enjoyment of D&D or role-playing at all, comes from playing out as a character that you've made. There's a place for, don't get me wrong, chat, there is a place for pre-made characters. But as a new player's first character, that's not really it. Not if they want to play the game seriously. If they're just trying it out, sure. But if they're going to be playing like a campaign of any sort of length, then let them make their own character. Which is where D&D falls into, you know, the whole of, oh, it takes hours to make a character, which, given, depending on experience and competence, can take anywhere from a couple of hours for a new player to maybe half the day. For a real world example, it took my boss 4 hours to make a character, and by that point he didn't want to play anymore. I can understand why. Alright, I'll stop talking about D&D now, at least at large. It's a useful yardstick. And look, it's not a bad game. I do enjoy playing it. It's just really bad at getting new people into role-playing. Because what happens is, it sets a bad example. People play D&D, maybe they stick with it for 3 sessions before burning out, deciding they just don't understand what's going on, and leaving. Even in cases where people don't leave, they still stick in. If someone ever turns around and goes, "Oh, hey, I want to play this game," well, their first instinct typically is to say no, because learning D&D was such an investment in time and effort that they just don't want to. They don't want to have to learn another D&D. They don't want to have to learn another game because, oh my god, this took so long. This took so long to learn and to understand, and now they want to play another. They want to make me learn another one. No, I understand how to play this one. I just want to play this one, and that's really bad for the hobby. It's good for wizards, assuming this player sticks with D&D and is happy to buy their books and products and stuff. But it's bad for the hobby because it's poisoning new players against other games. They don't want to learn another game because they've already invested so much time and effort into learning D&D. And they don't want to have to replicate that. And when, again, your first character took you 4 hours to 6 hours to make, yeah, no, that's understandable. Unfortunately, outside of D&D, we don't really have a system that is, this is what you throw at new players to get them invested. This is where we come in, chat room. Here's our grand plan. Right, here's our big... with just the chillest thing. Can we... You know, I'm gonna go back to the last one. There we go. Alright, this is where we come in, chat room. I'm loving this. So, why are we making this? Well, chat, there's 3 things I want to make. Number 1. Beginner-friendly system. Does all the above. It's fun. And this is going to be Project Sunflower. Alright, so where we come in on this is that we, together, are going to make a role-playing game that is specifically for new players. That is, players who have never played before, players who are kind of interested. Alright, let's say that from the top. This is for both players who have never played before, have never touched a role-playing game in their life, have, you know, maybe seen them in passing but never actually played one. Maybe they like the idea of a role-playing game, but at the end of the day, they've never put pen to paper, hands to dice, and done it. But also, this is for players who've played maybe 1 or 2 games, probably in Dungeons and Dragons, or Pathfinder, because apparently that's a thing that happens. People play Pathfinder now. I don't know when that started, but I digress. This is for people who are maybe not confident with their role-playing ability. This is for people who haven't played before and need to be... just need that little push, right? They need to be shown a game that isn't so intimidating for them. And that's where Project Sunflower comes in. So Project Sunflower will be simple to understand. Low, steel floor. Versatile. Lots of room to play in different settings, which means we are going to go with generic abilities and skills. While also being suitably complex, which means many different die types. Introduces some skill and attributes. Overlap / dependency. That's based on physical attributes and experience. Nothing too unique. And put that in quotation marks. Alright, so that might look like word soup to some of you, but let me just break it down real quick. Basically, this means it is simple to read and pass, easy to play. Like, our barrier for entry is very low. Like, we're talking playing Limbo with Satan low. Versatile. We're not going to tie any specific... we're not going to tie any specific settings, anything that would kind of force you to play in a certain... in a certain, like, fictional world, right? So, for instance, if we... so we will put in a magic system. However, that magic is not going to be magic with a capital M, right? It is going to be something far broader to encapsulate a whole load of different non-natural systems. So this is something that Savage Worlds did, and something that I have done in previous systems. And basically the idea is that rather than having lots of different systems for lots of different esoteric things, you have one system that unites them all. Savage Worlds, for instance, combined... I'm trying to remember what they combined exactly. It was like 4 things. And it... It's going to annoy me that I can't remember what they were exactly, but it was something... I know magic was definitely one of them, and this was typical wizard magic. So you had magic, you had... I think one of them was like summoning, or something, like you could summon little critters. And one of them was... I'm glad I remembered this, because this is what made it tick. The last one was weird science, which is basically like your mad scientist kind of shit, with like wacky inventions and stuff, and people are going to go, oh, but the D&D artificer did it. And like, yes, the D&D artificer did it, and they basically went, oh, they don't actually use magic, they're just like your companions, you using little devices. Like, yeah, but counterspell still turns it off, doesn't it? So it's magic. Get fucked. But basically, Savage Worlds tied all of these together and went, hey, these all operate under the same system, even though they're different things. That is what we will be doing. We will have a broad, generic thing that says, hey, look, your magic might actually be called this, or it might be styled on this, and that's great, but this is a system that you use for it. So that's what we'll do with that. And basically we're going to be doing that along the board. So any sort of like character creation will be generic, with options for more specialized stuff, but a wide range of options for specialized stuff. So effectively we're giving whoever's running the game the room to run it in whatever setting they want, without having to effectively just hack the game into pieces to make it work. Or just reflavoring your swords as plasma swords, because yes, we've all seen that one before. Folks, just because you can use D&D to run a sci-fi game doesn't mean that you should use D&D to run a sci-fi game. It really isn't built for that, and there are good systems out there that are. Please use those. You'll thank me later. We've already kind of touched on this, generic abilities and skills. This just means the core attributes for characters and stuff are going to be generic rather than anything, you know, particularly pointed. Many different die types means that it's going to be using everything from the D4 probably all the way up to the D20. I think the D4, the D6, and the D20 are probably auto includes. The others will likely find places to slot in. But we'll see. We'll see. That's we know that we want to use many different die types, and that's to get people familiar to rolling them, familiar with seeing them. If we can do that with percentile as well, I'll be very happy, because percentile does tend to trip people up when they first see them. The reason we're doing this is because other systems use all of the dice, and we want our players to be able to go, oh, I recognize that. Yeah, I played that in Project Sunflower. Yeah, I had a character that rolled a d8 for this. So we'll go with that. It's less for a functioning for our game thing, and more for a... This is more of like a long-term sowing the seeds kind of thing. Same with skill and attribute overlap. What this is basically is you will have, again, to put it in D&D terms, you've got your core 6, right? You've got your core attributes, which then build into your skills, which may be higher or lower than your core stats. Depending, well, they'll never be lower than your core stats. Well, they could be. Anyway, the point is, you will have skills which build out of attributes, right? And these are like specific things. And this is like your sneak and your lockpick and all that kind of stuff, as opposed to like strength and dexterity here. Finally, skill stats based on physical attributes and nothing too unique. Basically just means we're taking a more character-centric focus on character creation. Basically, we're following the same lines as other games, we're just making a more simplified, not a more simplified version of these other games. Let's just get ahead of this. We're not out here to make a more simplified Dungeons and Dragons. We're out here to make a more simplified Savage World. No, we're not. We're not out here to make a more simplified anything. We're out here to make a unique system. Ugh. You can tell I've been just yapping for an hour and a half. Goddamn. But yeah, we're out here to make a more straightforward and accessible system, and it's not going to happen in one day, chat. I mean, it could happen in one day. I could just slam this out in an hour. Okay. Basically, what this means is that we will be basing character creation on very safe, tried and true stats and attributes. One of the systems that I made previously didn't do this, and instead it basically your stats were based off of how well you do in given scenarios or circumstances. So combat was a stat, right? But it didn't measure your strength or your dexterity or anything like that. It measured how well you were able to perform when you are being effectively being shot at or being attacked by other people. I know, it sounds weird. People are on the fence about it when they first hear it. It worked really well. The problem is that doesn't work so... That's not so hot for new players, because no other system does anything like that. Well, none of the common ones anyway, and those are the ones that we need to kind of... not cater for, but those are the ones that we need to prepare for. So, that's what we're doing for System 1. System 2 is... because there are 3 systems that I want to make. System 2 is the solo RPG one. So this is for people who either don't have a group or for very low player count. We're talking like a maximum of 3 people. So players can play many characters. Must be simple. Well, no, characters must play low skill floor. Are we familiar with this term, skill floor and skill ceiling? I will just quickly explain. So a skill floor is like the minimum amount of skill required to be able to play a game. So for example, let's talk about football or soccer if you're American. And like we are just talking about like normal football. Well, the minimum score, the minimum skill floor for football is being able to kick the ball. If you can't kick a ball, you can't play football. At least not traditional football. I'm fairly certain there is a form of football that exists for people who are in wheelchairs, which is great. That is a fantastic thing. Not so much for my explanation though, that kind of throws a spanner in the works there. But this can refer to games, it can refer to aspects of games. You frequently see this in like MMOs and MOBAs and different classes for those games, where characters and classes are referred to as having skill floor and skill ceiling. And basically, yeah, the skill floor is the minimum amount of skill required to be able to play those characters and classes effectively. So what this is saying is that characters have to be easy to play. A skill ceiling, however, that is basically how far you can go in the game, or how much skill it takes to maximize the potential of that thing. So again, going back to MOBAs and MMOs, a class that has a high skill ceiling is going to have a lot of options, a lot of things that you can do, a lot of room for skill expression, which is basically just showing how much you know about the game through your gameplay. Whereas a character with a low skill ceiling is frequently seen as not as powerful because there's less that you can do with them. So, for a solo RPG system, characters need to have a low skill floor because most of the time people will be playing multiple characters, which means they need to be easily accessible. It doesn't do well if a player playing, 4 characters has to go through a whole page of initiation for one of them and needs a reference sheet for the other 3. Right? They need to be easy to understand and easy to just play with off the bat, so that you're not wasting time just going through like books looking for resources. So other than that, it's kind of an open board. It's maybe more skirmish game. Then to TTRPG. It's probably going to be somewhere along the middle line of these, but we'll see when we get there. That's something else that I want to try out. And you're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. And the last one is perfect. The last one is perfect system, which is just a system that does all the stuff I want to do. So lots of unique ideas. I want vehicles, I want magic. I want... What else do I want, chat room? Oh, there's a bunch of stuff from other systems that I've made that I want to do, but... I'm just putting etc. in here for now. But these are less fleshed out as ideas compared to this. But yeah, this is something that I've been sat on for a while. So we understand at least vaguely. Oh, that's something else that I want to note down about this system as well. Should be no more than 10 pages. Because one of the things about, like... Okay, I'm gonna rag on D&D just a little bit more, because they did some really fucking weird stuff. So, some of you may have heard of Essentials, which is effectively the quick start guide for Dungeons and Dragons. Right, this is the Dungeons and Dragons kit that you get for your nephew who isn't too sure about role-playing, but he's seen probably a bit too much Stranger Things when he was probably a bit too young for it, and now he wants to play. So yeah, you get little Timmy this for Christmas, and it's a 48-page rulebook. Now, I'm not sure what you guys are expecting when I say this. It's a quick start guide to playing D&D. This guide, for reasons utterly unbeknownst to me, has rules for suffocation. And it has a whole appendix and a guide for hirelings. So let me break this down. You only get half of the base classes and half of the base races in D&D in the Essentials Guide. I think you don't get Paladin, you don't get Sorcerer, you don't get Warlock. I think the only races, not races, I think the only classes that you get are exactly Fighter, Rogue, Ranger, Bard, Cleric. And then the races are like Human, Elf, Dwarf, Halfling. And I think you get exactly the Acolyte background, but I could be wrong. There could be more than that. In lieu of more races, more classes, more, you know, any sort of interesting additions, you get rules on hirelings. Rules that I've not seen anybody use since 2nd edition. Because these rules are utterly superfluous. If your party wants NPCs, they will just grab them and drag them along. Most often your party doesn't want NPCs, but if your party must have NPCs, then you either don't give them stats at all, or you make them up as a character. Now, I'm not against the idea of hirelings and, you know, them having their whole, oh, they gain experience points and level up independently of the party and stuff. And it's like, well, that's more busy work for the GM, firstly. At that point, why not just make full-on characters? But okay, no, let's stick with it. Let's stick with it. Why is this in the Essentials book? These are not essential rules. You do not need these rules to play, much as you don't need the rules for suffocation. Or the rules for jumping. These are not essential rules, these are corner cases. These are... we can find them in Appendix C in the back of the main rulebook rules. These are... we'll just make them up as we go along because we're going to assume that there aren't hard and fast rules for them. Or maybe when we have a stat that is called Constitution and we're told that we need to roll for things that are difficult, that we can just roll for that? Because that makes sense. No, chat room, it's actually, you can hold your breath for a minimum of 30 seconds. But it's actually 1 minute for each bonus, you have in Constitution. So not your score, your score modifier. So if you've got a +2 to Constitution, you can hold your breath for 2 minutes. But if you have a 0 or -1, then it's that minimum of 30 seconds. You don't just, like, you know, immediately suffocate because you have 0 Constitution. You die. God, D&D is a stupid game. Like, that's not fair. It is a stupid game, but I mean that affectionately. The Essentials kit is written like absolute dog water, which is kind of true of a lot of their books. But Wizards, if you want someone who can, you know, if you want a guiding hand on what should and should not be in an Essentials book, you know, I'm right here. I'm right here, dude. I think there's a good chance Wizards are sending the Pinkertons to my house after all. Quick, someone get me a Hatsune Miku magic release. Ah, man. Alright, so I went off on a nice big tangent about the Essentials book, but I will say this. For as much as they've wasted room in there in what really should be the most pared down and efficient book in all of mankind's history, they did still manage to get a playable version of D&D into 48 pages. That's a lot better than the 400 odd that's usually just the player's handbook. Well, I think the player's handbook's actually 300 and the DMG is 400, but whatever. The point is, if we're making a game that is for new players, and not just new players, but it's being run by an old hat, I mean, new players all the way down, I want to give them a book that is no more than 10 pages. Because handing them more than that is big and intimidating, and 10 pages, I think, is fair to fit a simple enough system in. Without it being, oh god, why have you given me War and Peace? I think this is key. I think this is really important, and I think this gets overlooked a lot. Alright, so I've been shooting for about an hour and a half. I'm going to get myself a drink. Chat room, I will be right back. You'll behave. Or don't, I mean, I'm not your mom. Okie dokie. We're back. We're back. We're back. We're back. Wow. There we go. Okie dokie, so we know what we're doing. Let's get to it. Just get this up. Alright, so I tend to name my games as Project X, where X is just a code word. Usually after flowers. So this is going to be Project Sunflower. And the reason I'm calling it Project Sunflower is so basically the idea is like when you're a kid, if you're ever given any sort of like gardening lessons, which is a thing that I did when I was a kid, like when you're in like primary school, the first thing they'll get you to do is to like grow a sunflower. It's a very like easy, very beginner friendly sort of thing to do, and that's what I'm trying to go for here. This is of course a working title. It will receive an actual title at some point in the future. Alright, so let's go with an overview. So what we want to do here, and let me just introduce you to planning and ideas. So what we want to do is we want to lay down the foundations of what we're trying to do before we even start. This is just typically how designers do things for any sort of, well, it's how competent designers do things for any sort of product that you see. This is how software devs do things. This is how writers do things for non-fiction, typically. Even fiction writers sort of do this when planning out their books, but a lot of fiction writers also just don't plan anything and just kind of throw things at the wall and see what happens, which, hey, fair enough. But for a project like this, we do need to do an actual plan. So, overview. Simple system for new needs to accommodate groups, not just the individual players. Versatile. Should be fit for any setting. Should have a wide but not complex range of options for players, and suitably flex. The key word being suitably. If you decide to make a system, if you decide to make a game, whether that's tabletop or video game or VR or some other thing, this right here needs to be your watchword. There are a ton of games out there that I have played, that I have looked at, and some of them are very niche titles and some of them are definitely games you've heard of before, that I look at and go, I would really like to enjoy this game, but it is just too complicated. Or, conversely, man, I just can't get into this game because I feel like I've already solved it. And that sounds like a problem with subjectivity, and to some degree that is true. This right here is going to be different for everybody. But as a game designer, if you ignore this, you will end up alienating huge portions of your player base. Like, massive. Don't listen to the top 5% of people who are playing your game. They might be really passionate about it, they might really like it. That's why they're in the top 5% after all. But they do not speak for the other 95% of people. They do not speak for the people who are not playing your game because they just can't get into it in the first place. If your game is struggling, if it's just not getting the kind of audience that it should be, take a look at this. Because you could be keeping people out of your game without meaning to, because you've not thought about how deep you are in the tank on understanding your own game. Also, you do need to be careful, because when you are making... And this goes more for video games than it does tabletop, but it's worth bearing in mind again for either stroke. When you are making a game, you will, by necessity, be practicing it every single time that you test. Maybe not so much on like bug tests and stuff, but if you're testing to see that a level is beatable, for example, especially if you're testing to run like the higher difficulties, you'll be advancing your own skill in that game without even necessarily realizing it. You need to keep in mind that the first time someone picks up your game, they are going to be at a much lower familiarity with it and a much lower skill with it than you are. Like a really good example of this, I think, is Ultra Kill, which I really like. Ultra Kill, I think it's a really cool game. It kicks my ass. It absolutely slams me to the floor. And part of that, in fairness, is because I will play Ultra Kill when the new, like, a new installment for it comes out, and then I won't play it again for several months. So, yes, it does absolutely slam me into the floor, and to some degree, definitely, I deserve it. I do think that, at least in places, the dev has kind of gotten lost in his own sauce a little. And I think there's definitely like a certain percentage of the players of that game that will be screaming and going, oh, well, get good and all that kind of stuff. There's like, to some degree, yes, that is fair. However, you do have to bear in mind that there are people out there who will not jam your game super, super hard. And to some degree, like, I'm not saying you need to cater for everybody, but you do need to cater for the people playing your game. And that's all of the people playing your game. Not just the top 5% who will follow you to the ends of the earth and play your game every single day and have spent the last 452 hours just labbing it out to try and be just that little bit better. Not everyone has that time, not everyone has that dedication. You do kind of need to keep those people who are not that 5% in mind. This isn't to say that I dislike Ultra Kill, this isn't to say that, oh, I think it should be easier and blah blah blah. Like, no. No, I think it's mostly fine. But I think it could quite easily slip into less of the Devil May Cry inspiration and more of a Dark Souls inspiration. you know, peddle just a hackneyed fucking quote. Again, suitably complex. This is the watchword. So alright, so how are we doing this? So let's talk about features. I mean, we're talking about features for simplicity. Cut out unneeded busy work. Assumptions. Easy stats and modifiers. Consider array core. That's sorry. Pause. Conditional modifiers based on difficulty. So what we're doing is we're keeping things nice and vague, but also vague isn't really the right word. We're keeping things accessible, and we're keeping things broad and generic. So this is referring to a specific thing. That's not what I'm talking about here. What we're talking about is this. And this. Everyone knows what a stat is. Everyone knows what a modifier is. And we all know what difficulty is. I don't need to explain any of those. Conditional modifiers are just things that change how easy it is for a roll to... Look, this is a number that you put on the dice when things are easier or harder due to context. There you go. What? Combat. Unfortunately, combat needs initiative. I'd love to initiativeless combat. I've done it before. It's really cool. It works really well when you have a good GM. The other problem is that, which obviously we can't assume if it's everybody's first time. We do want to find a way to make it fun. Sexy. Unfortunately, it's just used in every other RPG system under the fucking sun as well. I think literally the only system I've seen that doesn't use initiative. I think I've seen two, and I'm not entirely sure on the second one. The first one is Dungeon World. By... what's his name? Hold up. Sage Latora and Adam Cobell. hope I'm pronouncing those correctly. But yeah, those guys made Dungeon World, which if you've not checked out Dungeon World, absolutely go and check it out. It's really cool. It does... So it's similar to D&D in setting in that it's fantasy adventure. It's the mechanics. The mechanics for Dungeon World are really cool. I absolutely... Go check it out. Go check it out, dude. It's really cool. I think those guys absolutely nailed what D&D should be. If Dungeon World was sat where D&D is sat right now, we wouldn't be having this stream. I'd probably be... I don't know what I'd be doing. I'd probably be playing something. But yeah, Dungeon World does initiativeless combat, which... It sounds like madness. Like, you explain to... And this is a rant that I wanted to have earlier as well, but... You explain to, like, most people who've played RPGs the idea of... You say the words, initiativeless combat. And they kind of lose their minds. They all go, what? How can you do combat without initiative? How does that... You can't do... You can't. You can't, because how do you know if you've hit them before they've hit you? And you go, buddy, that's what the die roll is for. Like, it's actually very simple. Unfortunately, because initiative is just in every RPG under the sun, we have to put it in here because this is ultimately... And I think that should be our underline here. A system for onboarding new players. So, I want to go back to something real quick. These are important, right? These qualifications here. Because what will happen with a lot of people who turn around and go, oh, I could make a system. What tends to happen is that they have played for 5 years. Give or take. They've been playing a while. Maybe even 20 years. Maybe they've been playing longer than I have. 20, 30 years. And they'll go, oh, I've been playing for a long time. I think I can make a system. The problem is, for all of that time, they have been playing Dungeons and Dragons. And only Dungeons and Dragons. Exclusively Dungeons and Dragons. They do not have this. I mean, they don't have this either, but I don't think this is as important. Although maybe it is. Maybe it is. They do not have this. They certainly don't have this. Why does this matter? Because it is breadth. It is understanding lots of different systems and the little things in those systems that make them tick. That's what's important to making a good game. If you've only ever played one game, if you've only ever cooked one meal, and you decide you're going to invent something new, what's more likely to happen is you're going to invent something that someone else has already invented. If you have only ever made grilled cheese sandwiches, and you decide to take the cheese out and you go really wild and you put in bacon, lettuce, and tomato. But you've not made anything new, you've reinvented the BLT. That's not new. Maybe it's new to you, but that's not new to the world. And a lot of D&D players will do this. A surprising number will do this. They will turn around and go, well, I've been playing for how many years, and that means I could make a system. It's like, no. No, you could make something that is adjacent to new. You could make a very good copy of something else. But you're not actually making anything new here. Whereas I've played pretty much every major game that is out there to play. I've played a lot of stuff that isn't at all major. I've seen lots of interesting ideas, I've seen ones that work and ones that don't. And I'm by no means saying that I am the paragon of all game creators, because I'm not. My scope is still very limited. You know, 25 games isn't actually that many when there are thousands out there. But this is how we get things like GURPS, this is how we get like Castles and Crusaders. These are systems, or the myriad D20 systems out there, and all of the D20, almost all the D20 systems, all do the same thing. They have the same 6 stats, which are Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. They have very similar skill lists, which build off of those 6 core stats. And then they pretty much boil down to roll a d20, add your number, and hope that beats whatever target number the DM just came up with off the top of his head. They don't do anything new, except slightly change the skill list in most cases, and add in some of the creator's favourite house rules. Now, if you're just making games for fun and all that, that's perfectly fine. And if you enjoy playing any of those games, that's also perfectly fine. Yeah, have fun with the hobby however you want. It's your hobby as much as anyone else's. Don't let me stop you. But these are not things that any professional, anyone who takes himself seriously as a game designer, should be leaning on. These are not. This is not the minimum bar. This is below the minimum bar. You should be doing better if you're serious about making games. If you're just interested in the process, yeah, sure. But if you're sat there like, no, I am competent. I have been playing for so many years. I know what I'm doing. I know how to make a system. I know how to make a game. And all of your experience is in exactly one system. You know that one system very well. And I think at best you could make a very good version of that system. But you are not prepared to make an actual system of your own. You are not prepared to make something new because you simply do not have a wide enough palette of experience. Much the same as I wouldn't trust a chef who has only ever made pasta to make me a steak. No matter how good their damn pasta is. So yeah, now that we've gotten that rant out of our system, let's go back to making the game, huh? Oh, whoops. Do you like my Bob Ross? I made a Bob Ross a while back. I did it in Paint. It was an experience. Man, the man goes faster than he has any right to. Okay. So, I should probably explain what assumptions are. Yeah, we'll get to assumptions in the future. Probably not this stream, but in the future. Alright, so simplicity, unneeded busy work, easy stats, combat. I want to make one roll. Do I want to make one roll combat? Chat, do we want one roll combat? Do we know what one roll? Do we know what? That's a tongue twister. Wow. Do we know what one roll? What the? God damn it. Do we know what one roll combat is? Now that I've gone past actually being able to say it, So what this is basically, this is tying together damage rolls and attack rolls. So you roll to attack. So in D&D, because it's just what we're using for reference. In D&D, you roll to attack, you roll to hit, and that's checks against target's arm class. And if you equal it or beat it, you then roll damage. One uses a d20, and then the other uses separate dice afterwards. So you use like a d8 or a d10 or something like that. Maybe multiple if you're lucky. Meanwhile, one roll combat will just go, okay, you roll to hit, and then you use that roll to determine your damage as well. So you don't roll again, you don't roll the same dice again or anything. You just use that one roll to determine whether you hit or not. I like one roll combat. Not many systems do actually use it though, that's the only thing. Although, I do think in the interest of making our system A, stand out enough and be unique enough to actually be worth making, and B, actually having a more streamlined system, I do think one roll combat is probably the way to go. It's also not something that's like particularly difficult to adapt to. Right? Like, I think it's an easy enough jump to go from, oh, I'm determining damage off of my roll to hit, into going, okay, I've rolled to hit, now I need to roll this separate dice for damage. I don't think that's too complex of a change. So we'll stick with one roll combat. I know that, Deathwatch doesn't quite do one roll combat, but they do use the roll to hit, both to determine whether you hit, and then if you do, to determine your hit location. I believe you flip the numbers around, so if you roll like a 13 to hit, you flip that into a 31. And then that like, there's like a body chart, it's like, oh, if you rolled 0 to 23, you hit this leg. If you roll 24 to 50, you hit this leg. If you roll a 31, you hit the head. Or like, whatever, yeah. That doesn't make sense, because that would mean they hit the head at the same time as the body, but whatever. We can go with one roll combat, that's fine. Alright, and then let's talk about aims. Make a system back. Welcoming to new players. We do this by making it simple, lightweight, and intuitive. I just had another thought that was like really good, and it has immediately just gone. Just completely out of my brain. God, no, gone. Completely gone. Ah! The brain of a goldfish. What was it? What was I thinking of? No. No idea. Oh well. So we are not making a system for everyone. Veteran players need not apply. So this is something that's easy to get caught up in, and you will hear this as like common wisdom, is that if you make something for everyone, you've made something for no one. I don't quite agree with that, although I will say that left-handed people don't have much of a use for, you know, right-handed scissors. And, you know, a pair of left-handed scissors made for right-handed people isn't going to be particularly useful to either of them. This is something that I ran foul of with my last project, which is still kind of ongoing, but I think is probably going to end up being converted into... it's probably going to end up being converted into the perfect system I was talking about earlier. Where I made... It was called Project Chrysanthemum. And the idea was that it was meant to be an evolution of a previous project, Project Anthurium, which I did complete and I was happy with, but there were some issues with it that I wanted to fix in the next game. So I eventually ended up doing Project Chrysanthemum, which was fine, mostly. But one of the problems is that about halfway through the development cycle, I decided, oh, this should be a game that is accessible to new players as well. Now, it wasn't a particularly complicated system, so the groundwork was already mostly there, but the problem is, I hadn't set out with that goal in mind, so it was simultaneously trying to, like, straddle both sides of the track, where it was like, well, this needs to be a game for new players, but it also needs to be a game that has a high enough skill ceiling that more experienced players can feel like they're able to, you know, really do a lot of things with it. But that runs counter to it being simple enough for new players to be able to, like, enter into and actually enjoy. I do think Chrysanthemum, as it stands right now, is still very playable. I think it's fine. It's... It just doesn't do either of what it wants to do very well. So I will probably take it and rework it into trying to be something more... more pointed towards veterans with more of these complex ideas. And a lot more nuance to it compared to Sunflower. This isn't to say that veteran players can't play Sunflower, they absolutely can. But they're not going to find a whole lot here to keep them invested, because it isn't made for them, it is made to teach new players how to play. So, to expectations or games they feature and properly prepare players for those systems. Yeah, again, we don't want to do the D&D thing of, you know, oh, every single game is like this, it's all super complicated and ridiculously... no, thank you. again, go check out Reese's, go check out Dungeon World. Alright, so let's... Yeah, page 3, we're finally on making, like, actual stuff. Intro. Words. Geohedger. Alright, so... how to play. So, here we put in description of what a role-playing game is, what to expect. I might skip this because it's got actual, like, music in, not music. Yeah, let's go. It's got lyrics in. I don't want to be sung over. Only my voice will be heard on this stream. None other, nobody else. Good soundtracks though. Good soundtracks, and I'm fairly confident they won't be copyright struck. I'm fairly confident. If they are, then rip the VOD, but yeah, it is what it is. What to expect? What the DM does. No, this is not a competitive game. One of the funniest things I saw was, I was playing this one game in uni called Castles and Crusaders. And this had like a rotating group of about 15 odd people. Frequently we would sit like 7 or 8 of us down to play. And we had some characters in there, and I'm not talking about the characters, I'm talking about the players. And one day, one of these guys who honestly thought he had a tongue of silver, and to be fair, he kind of did. Very good at talking to people, not very good at the whole not being an asshole thing. Surprisingly, chat room, there's a lot of those. But I'm the other way around, I think. I'm good at not being an asshole, but bad at talking to people. Which is why I'm a streamer. But he brought a friend who hadn't played any sort of role-playing game before. His friend decided to play a wizard. Castles and Crusaders, for those of you who don't know, very similar to D&D. Very similar. And he plays a wizard, and we're quite high level, so he ends up with some high level spells. And a session happens, stuff happens, whatever. At the end of the session, no one has explained to this guy what this game really, like, what D&D really is. Or, sorry, what role-playing really is. As, like, a collaborative exercise. So, at the end of the session, he turns around and goes, "Oh, my wizard disintegrates this other guy's character. He just casts Disintegrate on him." For no goddamn reason other than the player went, "Well, the game's over, so I might as well." No concept that this was like a recurring character. No concept that, like, the game doesn't stop once you've, like, packed it up for the day, right? Like, we're going to be coming back to this again at some point. You just killed, like, several weeks worth of a character there, dude. I think he ended up walking it back when it was explained to him, like, how this all works, but oh, for a moment, for just a fleeting moment, he did something beautiful. Good shit. Good shit. Not for that player, but for the rest of us, we all found it very funny. Alright, so we now know so then we probably want to go into basic mechanics. These might end up being separate pages, they might be on the same page, it depends on how big we make this. Let's put that as page basic mechanics, and this is going to be stats and skills. Do we put a magic system in here? I don't know. I don't know if we put a magic system in here. We might just put something more generic in. Yeah, I'm thinking we probably put in, like, special abilities. And then have them as part of that. I think that makes more sense. We'll get to that. Basic mechanics. Dice. How do they work? Which ones do we use? And then stats and skills. When to use them. So it should be a how to roll them. Here. How to roll them, when to use them. Sick. I'll put it in here. Special abilities. What these do, how they work. Oh, that's fortunate. Yeah, that's fine. Special abilities, what they do, how they work. There aren't any more basic, like, rules, right? I don't think so. Okay, so then we go... Charging. Functions. Make a character. Fluff. This paragraph. Do it as light. This is more of a note for me. So making a character in terms of making like a character is a process that, I mean, whole ass books have been written on this shit, right? We don't have that time, we don't have that space. Effectively, I'm going to put here that players should write just a couple of sentences for their characters. Oh, no, hold on, I've just had an idea. No, shut up, chat room. Shut up, and by that I mean keep talking, but like, shut up. I've just had an idea. Can use these for bonuses to rolls? Question mark? No, we really are doing aspects light. Okay, so now I need to explain aspects. So, if you decide to play Fate, you'll come across this thing called aspects. Characters have 4, and they will have one main one that is like effectively their core concept. And what aspects are they are little descriptors about certain parts of your character. So if we were to take off the top of my head, if we were to do a Jedi, right? If we were to do Obi-Wan Kenobi, his core aspect would be, depending on where it is in the timeline, so yeah, let's go like mid episode 2, like somewhere between episode 2 and 3. And I please don't talk to me about the Clone Wars TV shows. I really don't care. I love you, but no thank you. So if we were to talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi in terms of fate, he would have a core aspect that is something along the lines of Stoic Jedi Guardian. It would be something that is talking about how he is a Jedi and he is good at it. How his focus, he would probably have another aspect. His core aspect would probably be something like Stoic Jedi Master or Stoic Jedi Knight. Which tells you, like, his main temperament, it tells you his occupation, and it tells you roughly his skill level. You want an aspect to doing, you want an aspect to be doing like as much of that work as possible, but you know, not every aspect is a winner. From there, you have 3 other aspects. Usually the next 2 are like important, and the last one is kind of like a throwaway fun fact sort of thing. My character Arthiel, for example, he, depending on the canonicity, yeah, he's a problem. I love him, but he's a fucking problem. He is a super soldier. He's not very good at that, though. He's a protector / medic. He's also psychic. He's got some things going on. But for his fun fact, he had an aspect that was just, he's a good chef. He's just good at cooking things. And the way that Fate's aspects work are that you can invoke them when you're doing something or when you're in a situation. And aspects can be like kind of quite dry. Like all the aspects I've listed so far have just been about what they do and what they are. But you know, they can say things about your temperament, right? Like you can be like a fun-loving party girl, or a raging narcissist, or impulsive hothead who can't bear to let innocence suffer. All of these can be aspects. And the way that fate works is that you have a number of fate points, but you always want to keep that number of fate points hovering at around 1 or 0. Depending on if you're a player or a GM. And the way that they work is that when you're in a situation, you can invoke an aspect to gain a bonus. You can gain like a +2 to your roll, or you can choose to re-roll if you roll badly. And you can do this no matter what character you're playing, no matter, you know, if it's a classless system, it doesn't have like a magic system or anything. It has its own thing called stunts, which we won't get into. But effectively, you can re-roll any given roll in the game at any point, as long as you have a fate point. How do you get fate points back? Well, if you're in a situation where your aspect would cause you to act with a disadvantage or to act in a way that you, the player, do not find beneficial, you can, like, your GM can compel you to act. I'm using like proper nouns. Like, compel is a proper noun. They can compel you to accept an invocation against your character, where your character will do something that you don't necessarily want them to do, or that is dangerous, or, you know, you have to acknowledge part of their character that would give them a weakness in a specific scenario. In return for doing that, you get a fate point back. So it's this constant exchange of your character's, like, backstory and personality affecting the course of the game. Like, actually affecting your choices in the game as a player. You can choose to never accept a compel against you, but you'll just never have any fate points to reroll with or to add to your rolls. Your aspects can change over time as well as your character, like, grows and changes, and their mission might change, and that might change an aspect, or their profession or what have you might change, and that can affect their aspects. There's a lot of interesting stuff that you can do, and I think it's difficult because it's such a, like, block to try and get over. Like, you just end up ramming your head against the wall if you're unlucky. But if you stick with it, Fate can actually be a really good game to play as well. If you've tried role-playing before and you've only tried Dungeons and Dragons, I do recommend trying Fate if you can find a group that is running it. Just stick with it. The aspects really are the only difficult part of it. It's a very different game to Dungeons and Dragons, both in terms of how you play it and how it treats you as a player. I think it's really underrated. I think it's really underrated as a system. It's one of those systems that you don't really hear about until you start digging into tabletop fandoms and stuff. But no, absolutely worth your time if you are. I wouldn't recommend it as a first game. Simply off of the back of aspects being so pivotal to it and being so hard to, like, get your head around. I need to point out, when I first encountered Fate, I was looking at it with some of the guys that I was living with in uni, who we were all playing role-playing games. And we had, looking at it, we had a history major. I was doing English Lit and creative writing. One of my buddies, who I still play with to this day, he was doing... what was he doing? He was doing, like... I know he was doing a creative writing part as well. I think he was doing philosophy. He was either doing philosophy or modern liberal arts. But he was doing that with creative writing. And our last guy was doing programming, right? So pretty wide range. People from different fields in there. And all of us were looking at aspects and just going like, okay, I'm reading the words, but, like, they're just not going in. Like, like, we get it. They're asking us to write things about our characters, but God, we just don't know. And it took work. It took a lot of work to to finally like fucking crack it, man. It took ages. If aspects were easier to just like get off the bat, I absolutely would recommend Fate for like first time players. But if you've played before and it's kind of bounced off and it's not really been your jam, I do recommend giving Fate a look. Alongside that, I think give like Rhesus and Dungeon World a look as well. Man, I could yap for hours about just like different systems I think you should check. The Chronicles of Amber. There's a role-playing game for Zelazny's stuff. It's a diceless system, which is really interesting. Amber Diceless. That's what it's called. It is set in the Chronicles of Amber universe. The game was written and created by Eric... Oh, that's a very Polish name that I cannot pronounce. I'm sorry. Wojcik? I'm sorry, I am too English. I'm very sorry. But no, it's a dice system. It's cool. It's a really cool little system. Character creation starts off with a fucking auction. The stats are all unique and interesting. Any of them are arguably like the most important stats. Man, check it out, man. Check it out. It's really cool. All right. Amber Diceless has nothing to do with us today, though. So, yeah, we can absolutely do aspects like. I think I really like that. This was meant to be a note for me to be like, hey, just write a paragraph about how players should just write like a couple of sentences about their character and yada yada yada. And then as I was doing that, I was just like, wait, no, that's exactly what D&D does, except D&D has it a bit more pointed, where they're like, oh, you've got like 2 character traits and then a flaw and a bond and a whatever. And I think that's lame. I said it earlier and I'll say it again, D&D does not encourage you to make a character, they encourage you to make a stat block. I've made characters in D&D and I've played as pre-gens in D&D with exactly the same amount of focus on their actual character. Now granted, this can sometimes be down to the dungeon master, but I think that any game worth its salt will be incentivizing players to consider their actual character. So we'll go... Yes. Great character. So we'll do a paragraph of ideas on a start. Keep it simple, stupid. Because not everybody has a fucking degree in this shit. Also, keep it simple for them. Because it's really easy to go, oh, I need to make a whole character? Oh god. It's like, no, dude, you just need to be like, oh, they were a farmer, but now they want to go out adventuring because their farm lost money. You know, it's... And then you can just go from there. Ideally, I don't know. Should end on... End with the following. So this is like the big one. Why they're adventuring is like so important. What were they doing before? How long have they been doing this? Optional. But, why they're adventuring... And slash or what do they want? Actually, this is like... This is the key. This right here. This is actually the key. Let me explain. If you've got some guy who has just been a mercenary for like the last 15 years, and the king sends him out to... Ooh, ominous. And the king sends him out to, you know... Actually, let's go with the new music. To ravage the land and slay his enemies. Well, there's two reasons, right? Why are they adventuring? Because the king told them to. That sucks. That sucks as motivation. That gives your DM nothing to work with. It gives you nothing to work with. Because now all of the agency is on the king. You're only doing this because someone else told you to. What do they want? Why? The princess's hand in marriage, of course. Ah. Now that's interesting. Because now we've made that tie personal. We have tied that to the actual adventurer. It's gone beyond, you know, oh, because the king said so. Okay, well, what happens if the king dies? Well, suddenly the player has to make a judgment call on the spot if they've not thought about this before. Are they loyal to the king or to his money? It could go either way. Very, very easily. What do they want? That's a much better question. You have to you have to consider, like, the interesting thing about any given character in any form of fiction is the character. Their surroundings, sure, they'll add certain elements to your story. Gordon Freeman wouldn't be a compelling character if not for the awful world around him in Half-Life and Half-Life 2 and the many other expansions. But what makes any given character interesting is their choices. Even silent ones. Especially silent ones. And that goes just as strongly, if not, well, no, not stronger, but just as strongly for any sort of role-playing game character. What do they want? If you're a DM and you don't, or a GM, and you don't know what to do with a party, or just a player's character, ask them that. And then think of all the awful little ways that you can make getting that thing damn near impossible. Don't actually make it impossible, because that makes for a terrible game. But get it as close as you reasonably can. Make them work for it. And then once you're done, they'll turn around to you and go, wow, that was something special. Hopefully. Hopefully. In all seriousness, find out what your characters want, find out what your players want. And then, well, give them roads to it, and then make it difficult. Don't just give them what they want, because then they won't feel accomplished, they won't have worked for it, they won't have earned it. But give them roads to get there. Give them ways to find it. Give them ways to work for it. And then, in the end, do give it to them. Or don't. That all really depends on how they play and how you do things. This doesn't really matter. Optional. You know what's coming, chat room. We don't tolerate any lyrics in our songs. Pay no attention to that one song that had lyrics. Alright, how long have they been? Why? Actually, no, not why. How? Method. There we go. Family's a weird one. It really does feel like family should be more important. But a lot of the time it just isn't. Then assumptions goes in there. Oh, hold on. Let's end on 2 to 3 aspects. Hopefully Evil Hat won't like sue me into this. I think Fate has a thing where they're like, oh, you can use our parts to like make other games. I think it's open source, which is really cool. But you know, these will be legally distinct aspects. Shh. Good. Traits. Once per session, a trait can be used to grant reroll in a situation where that trait applies. Use these to generate this. 3 is probably too many, like 1 to 2 traits. My character. Well, that's okay, cool. Alright, so that's a... What we're doing here is we are incentivizing our players to think about their characters as people. And to keep that in mind. The one weakness that D&D has in this regard is that, yeah, it gives you tools to, like, describe your character and stuff, but doesn't really give you any reason to stick with that character's characterization, to keep any of that in mind. A lot of players are just well behaved, and will just keep that stuff in mind anyway. But not all of them. And I think players should be rewarded for keeping that stuff in mind, because it's not necessarily easy. And your game will be better if you have a scenario where, or if you create room for your character's characterization to actually affect the game. The fact that I'm choosing to play a hero who shows compassion, you know, a hero who is a noble soul amidst a sea of violent thugs and criminals and just like the worst of humanity. Yeah, I think that should have an impact on gameplay. Absolutely. Okay, so charge in crunch. And I think we could actually fit crunch in here. It would be that's skills. Ah, we didn't put combat in. Well, now we have to do it. Ah, I see. There we go, good work. Good work, me. Control enter. Combat. When is it? Combat. Initiative. Combat roll. Damage. We'll just do armors like, damage reduction. NDR. KO / death. Gesundheit. And I think that's about it. I think that's about everything that we need to do in combat. Good, because that was looking a little... Just zoom out a little bit so we can get better idea. Ah! No, that should be okay, actually. Just so we can see how it looks on the page. That's about a third of the page. But stuff like the combat roll and the damage should only be like one line. We'll put ending combat in as well, because we need that. Charge in, down to my characters, traits, then crunch, stat skills. Special abilities. Let's equipment. Okay, that's good. Assumptions. Just kill the beam. Oh. Look, I'll talk about assumptions really quickly because we're at 3 hours and I'm gonna wrap up in a second and we'll go raid into someone else. I'll just quickly go over assumptions. So, what these are is basically all the stuff like keeping basically any sort of like busy work. So keeping track of like rations and money, ammunition, all that kind of stuff. Seeing if you know like specific people in specific places. Like, none of that actually needs to be kept track of. A lot of that can just be assumed based on a character's background and stuff. You know, it's a fair assumption that someone who is like nobility, who's in their own country, can just afford whatever they want. If, though, they end up in a foreign place where nobody knows who they are and they don't have any resources on hand, well, suddenly it doesn't matter how much, you know, actual money they may or may not have. If they're not taking that currency around here, you effectively have nothing. So yeah, that's what assumptions does. Basically, what assumptions is meant to do is it's meant to take out all the boring bits and just make it so that it's like, okay, look, it's mostly up to the DM, but keep it fair. So we'll go over that. And credits. Woo! Gamers. There we go. Alright, so we've got the skeleton laid out. So next stream we'll start filling this all in and actually putting rules down and do an introduction and stuff. Now let me save this. This is Project Sunflower. Yes. Don't worry, chat. That was just an empty thing. Alright, let me wrap up. Let's get us on out of here. So I'm done for the day. We'll be raiding into... Where are we going to be raiding, chat? Where will we be raiding? I know who I want to raid into. Yeah, there we go. We're going to raid into we are going to raid into Asviti. She is a Tiger VTuber. She's very nice, her community is very welcoming. We will be shot when we go in. I'm just going to tell you that right now. It's nice though. It's nice shooting. They will be they'll be very they'll be very eager to share their bullets with us at gunpoint. But yeah, come along with me. We'll go say hi. But that's everything from me today. Our soundtracks have been, of course, Pyre and Hades by Supergiant Games. Excellent games. Go check them out if you haven't. And we will be back on Wednesday. We'll be picking up the Merc contract again. We'll be back in the Inner Sphere, where I'm sure only nice things will happen to us. Until then, take care, stay safe, and thank you all very much for watching.
neither. See,